Have you ever wanted to buy a Linux laptop and found it too hard?
Once or twice.
Yes. I've thought about this a little bit on and off for a while and wondered how to make it easier, because I think the process that a lot of people go through is they go hunting in online stores or in real life stores, IRL, in the big blue room, and then they go and find out whether that thing is compatible. They'll find a thing they desire and then go and figure out whether Linux is going to work on it. Now, some people will just buy it and find out whether Linux works on it by trying to install Linux on it, whereas other people who are a bit more cautious might do some research, ask the internet, ask friends, search on forums, that kind of stuff. And that seems to be kind of the problem in my mind. The way round it should be is that you should know a machine is going to work and buy that machine.
Mm-hmm.
And some people do recommend this. They suggest you go to only retailers who sell machines with Linux, and then you don't have a problem because they're selling you a machine with Linux. It's got Linux. It must work. Otherwise, they wouldn't sell it, right? That's an option.
Yeah, so that's a good option. The only issue with that option is that unless you're at a conference where you can meet one of those vendors and actually put your fingers on the wares and try it out and, feel it up for size and weight and all the rest of it, you don't know necessarily if it's for you. And of course, the other way of buying is some of the tier one vendors do their Linux laptops from time to time, like Dell and Lenovo of the world. But then when you decide, okay, I want to get one of those, you find out it's not available in your region. It was never available at all. It's only available for schools and university. There's all of these caveats. And so they announce all of these things and they're impossible to purchase.
Well, let's turn that frown upside down. I had an idea a little while ago, about a year ago. I had this idea where I thought, well, the answer is there are certified machines.
Yeah.
Why don't we only search for certified machines? That's part of the answer. Part of the answer is still, as I said, going straight to organizations that sell machines. I say machines because it's not necessarily just laptops. Some people want a home server. Some people might want a desktop or one of those little funky Lenovo small things that they put in the loft. And so there are a variety of machines available, not just laptops. And a lot of them are certified, and there are databases of these certified machines. And so I thought, well, what about we go and pull in that database of certified machines, because we know they work, and then go and search for them in online stores. And that way, we present only the machines to the user that have already been validated as working on Linux.
If you wanted to pull in a database and display that to users, you'd have to be some sort of developer.
Now, I see where you're going with that, Mark. Luckily, I can play a developer sometimes, and I figured out, I don't know how I stumbled on it a little while ago. There is actually an API for the Ubuntu certified.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's a list, right? There's a website you can go to, but behind that website, there's an API, and you can just call the API and say, give me a list of vendors and give me a list of versions of Ubuntu, and then give me a list of machines made by that vendor. And then if you work through the APIs, you can basically get the list of machines that have been certified to run Linux by Canonical for Ubuntu. Now, I get it. Not everyone wants to use Ubuntu, but that's a good starting point. And that, given that I'm like in the Ubuntu community and I have a legacy of working with Ubuntu, I figured that was a good place to start. Now, it's possible, and I haven't looked, it's possible that there's also a certified hardware list for Red Hat or other hardware enablers. I haven't looked at that because I wanted to get my, what you might call MLP, minimum lovable product. I know, I'm sorry. It's what they say now. A lot of people don't like MVP. They prefer MLP. The idea was that I go and get that data and then use that data to search for those machines, because the data has things like the manufacturer, the model, the SKU, the hardware manufacturer's model number, which is often a good way to search for things on other platforms. And so I thought, well, what could possibly go wrong? And it kind of works as a way to find machines. Now, the downside is there are still a small number of machines in that hardware compatibility list relatively to all the machines in the world. And it also doesn't cover the machines that are made by people like System 76 or Star Labs or Entroware, because they don't submit their machines to Canonical to be, checked for compatibility. But that's fine, I thought, because actually there doesn't need to be a hardware compatibility list for those ones because they're being sold with Linux directly. And so those could be included in the list as well. And so what I thought was aggregate all this kind of stuff together into a web page, allow the user to either search by vendor, model number, release of Ubuntu that they want to run, if that's an important factor, or release of Linux that they want to run, and maybe other filters like the CPU, amount of RAM, size of screen, that kind of stuff, and see what results we get. And I wanted to discuss it with you guys because I've got a prototype and I sent you some screenshots of what it roughly looks like. And I kind of feel like I want to put this online when this episode goes out so people can have a play with it.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts about this to expand on you gathering the data, which is it's in the interests of these Linux laptop or computer vendors, device vendors, to be able to get their stuff into your system. So maybe having an API where they can have an account and they can submit, or maybe a means by which they can publish a feed or a JSON blob or something that you can consume in order to keep the data fresh and up to date.
Yeah, I had thought about that as well. So something where like I'm going around the whole world scraping all of the stores in order to present the data doesn't sound like a bundle of fun. But something where these hardware vendors can just put their assets online somewhere in a standard format. Now, some of them almost certainly have already done that. And I've had a poke around and I know there's a couple that do that. But for those that don't, I think there's going to have to be some like reaching out to them and see whether it's important to them. I guess for some, they might not want to because no, we'd rather people came to our website and searched and had a first class experience. We don't want to be presented alongside something else. I'm just imagining that might be a conversation. Maybe not. It might be that I can have those conversations and people will say, yeah, here's a feed, here's a RSS or JSON blob with a list of all our SKUs and their pricing and all that kind of stuff.
So I'm thinking about the other side of this, which is, once you found the machine you want to go and buy it. So what have you been thinking about from that point of view? At that point, do you just hand off to, Curry's PC World and people have to go down the road and take them a printout and say, I'd like to buy this, please, sir?
Well, thankfully, shops like Curry's and PC World, I don't think exists anymore. It's just one brand now. But let's take that as what they call brick and mortar store. They also have an online presence, typically.
Gosh,
I know.
Very exciting, this computer magic.
Isn't it? And so I suspect what I would just do is link to the product on their store so that the user can then make a choice whether to reserve it in store and go and get it, or order it for delivery, or just not bother and go and find something else. Who knows? The idea is that it's just an aggregator. So, for example, let's say you're looking for a ThinkPad X1. You go to the site, you maybe choose Lenovo, or you just type X1 and you find the one that looks good. You click on it and it shows you a list of the vendors that have that,
right,
or have been known to have that. Now, there's a lot of potential problems with that, like different locales, languages, and there's a lot of things to figure out. But I just thought if I can create something that's the basics, that gives the idea of what I'm trying to create, and then see where we go from there and see if it's a viable thing or if it's just too much maintenance and not enough utility. And I think that is certainly a possible, but that's why we try these things, to see if they work.
And so if people do want to find their next Linux device this way, what's it called and where will our listeners be able to find it?
I don't know yet. I keep coming up with different names for this thing, and I can't quite settle on a name. And so the answer is you look in the show notes, and it'll be there because we're recording this like 10 days or so out. And by then, I'll have deployed the site and I'll have come up with a fun idea for a domain name. Or I could just like put it as a subdomain, like I did for MojiNav and Snapscope, just put it at like something.popey.com maybe, but I think that has slightly less credibility than actually having a domain. So this feels like
Alan's cheap laptops.
now, how dare you? How dare you? I knew you'd go there. Yeah, I'll find somewhere to put it, but it'll be in the show notes, and then people can give me some feedback.
Every so often, I review the tools that I'm using on the regular to see if there's something better out there. And it occurred to me recently that I had been using VS Code for 10 years.
Wow.
And the IDEs are not things I change very often, but I thought, let's have a little look. And I had been using, or not really using, but I had installed as a secondary editor on my machine for a couple of years, the Z editor. So I've sort of seen it through its sort of incubatory period. And it's been my Scratchpad editor. And I thought, I wonder where it's at and if this could be a viable alternative or replacement for VS Code. So I went off to have a look and try it out.
And the answer is yes. End of segment.
Yes. It's actually rather good.
To start with, were there any, after 10 years, any particular pain points you had with VS Code which you were hoping to resolve?
Not really, no. I was quite happy with it, other than
it's a bit fat.
Yeah, just recently you can feel the weight of it. When I was looking at Z, obviously it's written in Rust and it's GPU accelerated and there's all of this performance, focus. And it's true, it is very fast, and it can render my code of bash scripts at 120 frames per second, which is, remarkable. Yeah, finally, refresh rate of my high refresh rate monitor in my IDE. That's what I've been seeking all of these years. But it's not about, that's the performance advantage that is advertised and people talk about, but it's not the performance advantage that I get from Z, and the one that I had observed that VS Code was struggling with. And it's these sorts of things. It's when you need to do a large file search or text string search, or you're working on a large file. Maybe you have got like a JSON blob that is many thousands of lines long and you need to scan through it or search through it and things like that. It's those things that I really notice that VS Code struggles under its own weight. And if you shell out to the terminal and you use command line tools, you can cut through large files like that in no time at all. So I suppose that was my observation about VS Code, is that it just felt chunky and heavy.
That's what used to throw me out of VS Code and make me reach for Sublime Text, which I used to reach for all the time, as, like you say, like the Scratchpad editor. If I just want to open a text editor and have a blank document that I can start typing in and know that actually if it crashed or if I just closed it or rebooted the machine, the next time I open the editor, it will still be there and the file will still be there, whether I saved it or not. And that reliability and speed is something that I think is really sorely missing in VS Code. So I'm interested to know your experience with Z.
Yeah, so I talk about the search there because that's something that I use a lot, and I really noticed that. And in Z, the searching and all of those operations are just really fast. They're very fluid. It's light years faster. And it's one of these things that you feel more than you sort of observe it. You're just aware you're not waiting, that there isn't any sort of lag behind anything that you're doing. And that extends to things like language server integrations and things like code completion and stuff like that. In VS Code, that feels like you've gone past the point at which you expected it to do something.
Yeah.
And then it interrupts you, and it's bloody annoying.
You think, there is no code completion for this line. Oh, yes, there is.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And so so it interrupts you at the wrong time. Whereas in Z, that whole integration of everything feels very fluid and natural, and it never feels like it's just suddenly woken up, that thread came awake at the wrong moment. It's just always there on it. And so I've noticed just that fluidity of it being responsive. And it is obviously, very fast. I was talking about language server integrations there because I have rediscovered sort of the power of language servers. This is one of those things where I would remember to set them up sometimes, and sometimes I wouldn't. And then when you do, suddenly you realize, there's a whole bunch of extra stuff I get out of this. But one of the things I've found useful these days is the integration of language servers and sort of AI-powered code completion, is that those code completion agents will monitor the problems reported by the language server and then prompt for the correction or insert the correction live. And that sort of integration in Z is just seamless. It's just on it all the time. And I'm really enjoying that. But you don't have to think about the language server integrations because it will reach out and grab the right language servers for you if you don't have them installed. But if you do, you do have the means to configure them the way you want. But if you don't, it gives you a sensible default language server for whatever you happen to be editing, which is terrific. And one area of IDEs where I've never really been on it is debugging. That has always required some degree of messing around that I've never fully understood. And sometimes I've got debuggers to work and sometimes I haven't. And sometimes I resort to, putting print and echo statements into things just to, fill the gap.
Hey, even me, a seasoned developer, I do that as well, Martin.
Well, I'm glad I'm in such good company. But the debugging support that's built into Z is outstanding. It just works with just about everything. You just press F4, you're in the debugger, and breakpoints and step throughs and everything just work. And I've been seriously impressed with that because that's a tool that I sometimes have available, and now it's just always there. And I'm sort of getting in the habit of using debuggers properly as a result of that. And if you do like a bit of AI-assisted development, then it really is very good for that. It has an agent panel, so think like the GitHub Copilot chat type thing, where there's a chat window alongside the editor.
Yeah.
And it also has first-class integration with GitHub Copilot accounts. So if you've qualified for the free Copilot on GitHub, you can authenticate with that and access their stuff, and you can use Copilot's code completion within Z. But where it really shines is the inline assistant, which suits my approach, where I like to stay in the loop between the AI and the code. And this puts me even deeper into the code with the AI assistant. So now whilst I'm in the code editor, there isn't a chat window open. I can hit, I think it's Control Enter, and it inserts a chat line at that point in the code. And you can have a conversation about the bit of code that you're in right there to either request a refactor or a fix or whatever it might be, deal with that, but you haven't left the code. The work happens with the AI assistants, but you haven't stepped away from the code. You're right there in it. And I really like that, seeing and being a part of the development process as opposed to just having it written by something else somewhere else. And not being able to observe what's happening as you do it.
I think that's important. If you're the kind of person who is not like vibe coding, but just using it to achieve tasks like, I want a performance review on this function, or I want to know how to reduce the number of API calls that I'm making. What can I optimize? That it's not, you're not using it as like a black box. You ask it a question and it outpops code. You want to ask specific questions at a point in the code base that you're already familiar with. You just want a little bit of assistance. You want the excitable intern, as I call it, to wake up and just focus its attention on that thing and not get distracted by all the other stuff in the code base or go off piste and do something else, right?
Yeah. be really laser focused on what you're working on. If you install ZEditor, and I encourage people to do so, you might think it looks a bit Spartan, and it doesn't change. It, like, you install a load of extensions and it looks very clean, very elegant. And by comparison with VS Code, it's extremely minimal, but actually it's because good decisions have been made about everything so that there isn't as much UI clutter because it's all been taken care of for you. So I feel it's almost like a distraction-free coding environment because there aren't icons and glyphs and colored things and multiple pane switching options scattered all
Martin,
over the place.
you love icons and glyphs and colored things.
Yeah.
I do, but not
in blog posts.
yes, to emphasize writing, but not like constantly dancing around whilst I'm trying to concentrate on something that's in front of me.
I've also switched to using Zed, and when I walk around the office, when I'm in the office, it's surprising how many other people in the office are all using Zed as well. It's
interesting.
It's really like picked up in popularity, and like you can spot it a mile away, like just as you can spot VS Code and you can spot the Sublime Text. And it's interesting seeing the grey bar along the top. It's like, interesting, another Zed fan.
Yeah. So what I ended up doing is I went through my VS Code configuration and looking at all of the extensions and the language servers that I had configured and finished configuring VS Code completely. And once I had like that baseline VS Code, what I then did is went through doing the same or equivalent thing with Zed to see how many languages does it fully support with debugging and language servers and formatters, and how many extensions are available that do the things that I require. And so here's the number. Zed offers me 91% feature parity compared to Visual Studio Code once I've installed the extensions that I need in order to fill the gaps. So I've switched over to Zed as now my daily IDE, and the gaps that are missing are a couple of maybe quite niche sort of extensions. And so I thought, how hard can it be? This is an opportunity to maybe write one or two extensions for Zed and learn that process.
And what language is it? JavaScript again, like it is for VS Code, or is it Rust as it's written in Rust?
It's Rust, yes. And I believe the way it works is you sort of submit to the registry, and then they build them. And then when you add those extensions, it automatically grabs the built extensions out of their registry.
Okay.
Is there a configuration of your Zed in your Nix config repo in GitHub so other people can see what extensions you're using and that kind of stuff?
There is. I've got in my Nix configuration, I've got a directory called development. And inside there is a directory for each like language ecosystem. And then there's a directory for Zed and VS Code. So there's the base configuration in the Zed directory for the base IDE. But then inside like the C directory and the Python directory is the configuration for language servers and formatters for those languages for VS Code and for Zed. So yes, you can scan through there. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. So it doesn't matter that it's a Nix configuration because it's actually like the way you view it, it looks like the formatting of the actual configuration. So you can pick it apart and figure out what you want.
Can you see yourself removing VS Code?
I'm about to. I'm going to do it. I'm just about to go on a work trip, and I'm going to.
I did not expect that, actually. I fully expected you to say something along the lines of, well, it's Nix, so it's not really there until I call upon it, or I'm sat in a directory with the dir-env or something. You've fallen down in my estimation, Martin. I really expected you to respond with the Nix way.
No, so I am going to disable VS Code in my configuration, so it just won't be a feature. Yeah.
I've had enough of being on the net, so I've joined the Mesh.
Ooh.
What's the Mesh?
Well, I've joined a Mesh anyway. So
haven't we done this before?
I think you had a Wi-Fi mesh. This is a different kind of mesh. This is a wide area mesh.
Okay.
There's little devices you can buy which are like little long range radios, and they can send signals quite far, ideally with a good line of sight. And you can get firmware for these, which basically creates ad hoc networks across long distances without relying on existing infrastructure like mobile phone towers or internet cables and so on. So I bought myself a little box called a Heltec V3, which is a similar size to a sort of Raspberry Pi Nano, but it has basically a microcontroller and a little LCD screen and a USB port and an antenna, and that's about it. And you can flash on some custom firmware from a mesh networking project, and then it will start listening for signals from other people around you, and you get to see who's there.
So this device, the hardware is like, it looks to me like a Arduino.
Yeah.
It has an ESP32 and a thing called an SX1262, which apparently is the LoRa long range radio chipset, and an antenna in there.
Yeah.
I guess that doesn't go super far.
But it's got a little antenna that clips onto the board.
Ah, okay.
So you get a little one with it. You can get bigger ones. You can get different devices. This is just one of the devices that supports it, but you get other devices which are, a lot of them are based on the ESP32, but you can get ones that are based on lower power chips. So the good thing about the ESP32 is that it can connect via Bluetooth and Wi-Fi to other devices. So you don't use this device to interact with the network. You use it as a sort of communications node.
It's a network adapter.
Yeah, exactly. And then you connect it to your Wi-Fi, and then you can communicate via your Wi-Fi with other devices on your network. So, for example, if someone sends you a message, you open the app on your phone. So in my case, I'm using a system called Meshtastic. So I open the Meshtastic app on my phone, and that's connected to my Meshtastic node via my Wi-Fi. And then, so it'll show me that node and then any other nodes that has seen. So the way it basically works is, when your node sends a message, it will broadcast it out as far as it can. If another node picks it up, it looks at the message and says, is this for me? And if it's not, it rebroadcasts it. And with Meshtastic, it will do that up to 7 times to get as far as it can across as many directions as it can, basically, in the hope that eventually it will get to the node which you're trying to target. And it's end-to-end encrypted. So no one that it's hopping through can read it, only the person that you're intending it to get to.
So the goal is, like, you want to have enough of these devices, you want to convince enough people to have these things so that you are only like 7 degrees of separation away from anyone else that you want to talk to. So I could potentially talk to you if there were enough Meshtastic nodes between me where I am here and you where you are.
Exactly, yeah.
You said it can transmit a long way. How far is the long way, and how dependent is it on an antenna?
So yeah, there are lots of factors at play here. So yeah, it's about your antenna. It's about where it is, line of sight, where the other nodes are. So I know that there is someone else in my town, right at the other end of town, and I can communicate directly with his node. But I have also communicated with people in Northampton, which is quite a long way away, over a couple of hops. I did at one point get a message from someone who said they were in Manchester, which is an extremely long way away, and then a whole bunch of things. So where I am, I kind of get up to the edges of Birmingham with a few hops and Milton Keynes, but not so much to the south. And that could be because I've got it in a north-facing window.
Right. But this is specifically multi-hop distance that you're describing. What is sort of the range of a single... I know there's lots of variables in this, but like your single hop, how far away is that approximately?
That's probably about 4 or 5 miles, I think.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm just working out, because I can see my office out this window here, and it's definitely less than 4 or 5 miles away.
Yeah.
I guess you're dependent upon like other people doing this and other people having these Meshtastic nodes. Is there like a map that shows you where all the nodes are, or do people not want to put their nodes on a map, or are some nodes on a map and some not, or
Yeah.
do you just like sit there and like wave it around until you see another one and hope for the best?
I mean, some are and some aren't. So when you detect another node, you get a list of all of the nodes. Some will be sharing their location and some won't, and it's up to them what location they share and how accurately they share it. So I put in my lat long coordinates, and then I say within like 500 meters or whatever it is, and it puts a circle and says this node is somewhere here. But some you can see the node on the list, but it doesn't give you any location. There is a public map where nodes can post their location online, so you can see more broadly. I can't remember what it's called now, but yeah, you can see more broadly like how many nodes are in various areas. But yeah, that relies on people wanting you to know that.
So there's one called Mesh Map, which looks disturbingly like Nerdy Day Trips.
It's got that same sort of mapping.
It's the same UI.
Yeah,
yes.
UI, yes, like the heat map, and then you zoom in and they spread out. Yeah, Meshtastic in particular, I think my understanding is that it's really good if you're trying to make an ad hoc network. So if you're going on a camping trip or a hike with a bunch of people, or going to a festival, or maybe going to a protest or something, and you want to be able to communicate with your particular group of people, if you all take a Meshtastic node and turn up and turn them on, you're connected. It just works like that. There is another system called Mesh Core, which works slightly differently, and as I understand, is more suited to a bit more of a coordinated setup. So that relies on you having clients and routers, and it can hop a lot further, or it will hop a lot further than the Meshtastic. But clients can only have their message forwarded on by a router. It's not like completely peer-to-peer. So you send a message to a router and it will send it on via other routers up to 64 hops, which can go a lot further. But it requires people to be running these router nodes in suitable locations in between. So if you're a bit more coordinated, then that can get you further.
And just to be clear, this is a messaging platform, if protocol. It's not like data. You can't create a data network between these nodes.
Well, it does send data. What people mostly use it is quite low bandwidth by compared to, 5G. So, people use it for sending messages. Another thing it's useful for is telemetry. So say you've got sensors deployed in the field somewhere, but you don't want to have all of these sensors having 4G modems in to get the data back to you. You could have them talk to a Meshtastic node, and then that can relay the data back over long-range radio to somewhere with an internet connection. And that saves you having to have a big Wi-Fi antenna pointing at your sensors, or higher power devices out in the field. You can run low power stuff and then have that hop back to you over a long distance.
So I've just had a look in my town, and there's one that's like walking distance from me, and I noticed that it's been down for 6 days. But I also noticed that it has some environmental metrics in it. It's some kind of node that has some sensors. So it has like temperature, humidity, and pressure, and also some other metrics that apparently it can show. But this is on a different map. So there seems to be a couple of these Meshtastic maps. I'm super interested in this now. Having got my thing in the loft that's looking at planes flying over, I now need another thing in my loft that can like message things backwards and forwards. I totally need this in my life. Where did you get the device from, and how much was it?
I think I just bought mine probably off Amazon or eBay. It was about 30 or 40 quid. I mean, there are more expensive options if you want. You can actually get one which is more like a little messaging device with keyboard and screen and a little antenna sticking out the top that you could take around with you. This is just plugged in all the time, sitting on my windowsill. But you can get battery-powered portable ones, or with these Heltec boards, you can take them out of their case and attach a battery and whatever else if you chose to do that. But yeah, if you just want one which just sits on in your loft and you connect your phone to it over Wi-Fi, then about 30, 40 quid is what you're looking at to get started.